Hey everyone, welcome to Standout Authors Unbound. And today I'm here with Chrissy King. Chrissy, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about your work and what you're up to?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me, Kevin. My name is Chrissy King. I'm a Brooklyn-based writer. I talk a lot about body liberation. I wrote a book entitled The Body Liberation Project: How Understanding Racism and Diet Culture Helps Cultivate Joy and Build Collective Freedom. So a lot of the work that I write about is around body liberation, but also just a decolonized approach to our bodies. I write a lot about anti-racism within wellness spaces, inclusion within wellness spaces, like what that actually means and looks like practically. Yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about what I do.
Very cool. And anyone who is here, you can feel free to ask any questions and we'll try to tackle them as they come in if you're interested. Can you talk about how you got into writing and what made you decide to write a book?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I actually have always been interested in writing since I was like younger. Like I was a child. I would like my favorite thing to do is like go to the library and read books and then like write my own stories. But when it comes to like writing my own book, it's actually something I always had in the back of my mind that I would like eventually do one day. However, I will say that my path through publishing was very untraditional in the sense that I was doing a lot of freelance writing during 2020, 2021, even prior to that actually. But 2020 is like when, topics like anti-racism
Hmm,
and DEI like really boomed. And so a lot of the work that I had already been doing became more amplified during that time period. And I was doing a lot of freelance work prior to that as well, but I wrote an article, I think it was for Shape Magazine, if I'm remembering correctly, about what's it like to be a Black body positive coach or trainer. And I really was just interviewing other coaches and trainers. It wasn't even about me. But that article ended up going viral. I ended up, as a result of it going viral, the Today Show asked me to come on and talk about my work. And then a publisher reached out to me after that. And I did not end up working with that publisher, but it did send me on the journey of getting a book agent and writing a book proposal, and then subsequently publishing a book. So I always say it's very woo woo, but I always say like it almost felt like the opportunity presented itself to me, like it was just the right time for me to write a book. And so that's why I ended up publishing when I did.
that's crazy. Did you ever expect to go viral? And what was it like before the viral moment? Because most people never go viral.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting that at all, actually. Because again, I think that it was work that I had been talking about and writing about for years. So it wasn't like I was saying anything new or like revolutionary in my opinion. I guess maybe if that's not something you have been familiar with, like those topics did sound like really important, and they are important. They always have been important, but it's just
Yes,
like not
yeah.
other people realized that they were important. So it was really interesting going viral. Going on Today Show was really cool. It was virtual because it was like during the height of the pandemic still, but
Right.
it was really awesome. And I think because I didn't have any expectations for publishing at that time, it wasn't like a goal of mine. I was able to be like really relaxed about the process. So essentially, when that first publisher came to me, I almost actually thought it was like a joke at first because I was like, that's not really how that works. But I had a call with this publisher and basically, like, we talked for like 30 minutes. And then after the call, he asked me to like send him a couple paragraphs about like what I wanted to write about. And I was like, oh, I think this is like a real thing. And so I did send him a couple paragraphs, but at the same time, I reached out to someone that I had met like one time in real life, but we had been social media colleagues because she had published a book and she had self published a book. So I reached out to her and asked her if I could pay her for a call because like I had questions about this whole process. And so she said, yeah. And so I paid her for the call. I don't even remember. It was maybe like $100 or something. And we talked about the process and she's like, this is really cool, but like, this is amazing. Actually, also you need a book agent. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, don't know how to get one of those. And she was like, "Listen, I know an agent. I can put you in contact with them. I have no idea if they'll be interested." And so she put me in contact with this agent, and like within 24 hours, the agent had contacted me. We had a call, and she was like, "I would love to work with you." Which now on the flip side, I also know that's not normally how the process works.
Yes.
And so I got the agent, and then that first publisher that had contacted me, actually did reach out with an offer. And my agent, whom again I had just met like 48 hours ago, basically was like, listen, I think this is a pretty good deal for a person who's never written a book. But I feel like if you slow down, wrote a proposal, shopped it around, we could get you like a better deal with like a publisher that might understand the vision of your book more. So I took her advice and it worked out. Like 4 or 5 months later, I finished my book proposal, shopped it around to major publishers, and I ended up getting a book deal with Penguin Random House, under the imprint Tiny Reparations. And luckily for me, I listened to that, agent because the offer that they gave me was like 4 times what the first publisher offered. So she was right in that advice. But again, I feel so comfortable saying no because I wasn't really like I was very, I want to say detached from the process, but it wasn't like something that I had been like striving for at that
Right.
particular time. Yeah.
Yes, it all just fell into place. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're all you have to do is set the intention of something, and things will find their way to you.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes we don't even intentionally go out to do things, but I think just the way that we approach life and all the creative work that we want to do helps the world and the universe find
Yeah.
us sometimes. Obviously, that doesn't happen for everyone, but when it does, you gotta make the best of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you were approached because most people are not, and most people write a book first, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to take this to other people." So, what
Yeah.
was involved in the first finding um, your book proposal ideas, and
Yeah. Yeah.
did you talk to somebody about that, or how did that work?
Yeah, so, obviously not obviously, but I because I was, like, really new to publishing, I actually had no idea what a book proposal even was. So the agent that I signed with, she recommended a couple of people that I could potentially work with, and I did end up working with one of those people, and this is how, what's the word? How, uninformed I was about the whole process is that I knew there was a fee that I was paying this person, and I guess in my mind, I was like, "Oh, I'm paying them to, like, write the proposal," but obviously that's not the case at all. You're not paying them to write the proposal, you're paying them to help you. So, I was, a little taken back by that at first, but I ended up working with this person, and I her name is Rochelle Fredson. She does amazing work, in terms of, like, helping people with book proposals. She also has her own program where you can kinda do it on your own. She didn't have that at the time, but she does that now as a more, like, accessible option, and honestly, it was, like, the best thing I've ever done is the proposal because it really forces you to, like, create it's basically a roadmap for what the book is going to be, and I think that without having done that and also having done that now, I realize that a person can never write that for you, like, you need to write that for yourself.
Right.
But it's honestly the best thing I could have ever done because it really helped me have a true understanding of what the book was gonna be about, chapter by chapter, and it was really like a roadmap. So when I sat down to actually write the book, it felt so much easier. But a proposal in itself can also be very time consuming. It ends up being like, 60 to 75 pages usually. It also includes 2 full chapters of the book typically. So you're kind of in it at that point. But it gives you and the publisher like a really good sense of what the direction of the book is going to be.
Mhm. So, when you were doing that, were you also freelancing at the same time?
Yeah.
So, you're balancing.
Yeah.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a lot actually. And so when I first met with my book agent, she was like really excited about it. And she was like, I want you to like try to get this done in 4 weeks. And so at first I was like, sure, but then I slowly realized that was never gonna happen.
Right.
Because yeah, I'm working and obviously you're not writing the proposal itself is not generating income, right? So you still have bills to pay. So I was freelancing, I was working on so many different projects. I was doing consulting work at the time. So it was a really, really busy time. So it ended up honestly taking me closer to 3 months to finish the proposal because I just didn't have as much dedicated time to just work on that. And I think that is the same with like the publishing process too, or the book writing process. Is because it's like, yes, you get an advance sometimes, and that can be really helpful, but like you also need to leverage other things, to keep your finances going. And so I think it's really a balance of knowing how to like dedicate time to writing and then other writing projects or just like whatever 9 to 5 work you're doing and figuring out how to make that all work and keep your brain intact, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into something like
Yeah.
writing a book that I
Yeah.
think a lot of people don't realize, and there's also, like, a team effort. It's not just you doing this by yourself, you need
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people working together in tandem in order to make anything that's going to really make an impact come together, I think.
Yeah.
Can you talk
Um,
about any of the other parts of the process, like working with an editor, any of that stuff that
yeah.
were really crucial?
So I feel, and I think one thing also about publishing that I didn't understand at the time is that like your experience can be so varied depending on like the publisher that you land with and the editor that you have. And so it's like actually, I felt really lucky because Rochelle, who I worked with on the book editing or the book proposal process, used to work in publishing as a person who bought books, and then she worked with authors too. So it was also really valuable because she gave me a lot of insight into publishing that I think I wouldn't have had without having that relationship. And I really knew like important questions to ask when I was talking to different publishers and like how much creative control was I going to have over the writing? And like what's the relationship with the editor going to be like? And so like I knew a lot of things going into meetings with publishers I think were really important. And the publisher, I always tell this story because the publisher that I ended up working with was not the highest bid on the book. There was a publisher that had offered a higher bid, but I felt most aligned with with the particular publisher that I went with. I felt aligned with the editor. I felt aligned with the team. I felt like they understood the vision of the book that I wanted to write. And that's really, really important because I have, now going through this process, I've had a lot of other friends who write books. And sometimes it can be really frustrating if you're working with a team or an editor or publisher who wants to like kind of tone down some of the things you're saying or wants you to say, or feels like maybe you're saying something that's like too political. And so that was really important to me when I wrote my book is that I was going to have like creative control to say the things that I wanted to say. And so anyways, all that to say that like I worked with an editor that I really liked, and she was also like really responsive to how I wanted to work. So from the beginning, she told me like, "Hey, we can meet after every chapter. We can meet. You can write the whole book if you want to, and then send it in." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't do that." So at the beginning, we would do check-ins for like after every chapter for the first like 2 or 3 chapters, and then I got a good sense of what she was looking for, and she got a good sense of how my writing style was, and we felt really comfortable. And so then I wrote the rest of the book without checking in with editors, unless I needed help. But typically, like for the most part, I just wrote till I finished the manuscript, and then I submitted it to my editor. And again, I think because we had kind of like done work up front to know kind of what we were
And
looking for and that we were in a good flow. I felt really comfortable with that. Because unfortunately, I know people who have submitted their whole manuscript and the editor's like, you know, read, 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 read. And it's like a lot of rewriting, which is not a good feeling either. And to be fair, I will say that another reason I went with my particular publisher is because they are a smaller imprint of Penguin Random House. That means that they put out less books. And so they have more dedicated time. Like the editor has more time to actually work with writers. And sometimes if you're not at a smaller imprint of a publisher, they editors don't have the time to even go chapter by chapter or to even check in with you. Sometimes it's just like I don't have the capacity, so turn the manuscript in and then we'll do the editing at the end, which can feel really jarring as well.
yeah, I think it's really important to find people that you work with the best because I've
Yeah.
heard authors who have worked with people who come to them. Like if you take the first offer, for instance, that
Yeah.
could have been a completely different process where you were not aligned, and this editing could have taken like twice as long. So it's really important when you're working with anybody in your process, whether
Mhm.
it's like a publisher, if you're doing it yourself and you're hiring an editor for yourself, that they are aligned with you in the
Yeah.
process.
It helps it feels so much better. I mean, there's gonna be, like, feedback no matter what you write, right? But it's a bad feeling to write an entire manuscript and the editor or publisher is completely misaligned, right? And you feel like you're almost rewriting the book. Like, that's not a good feeling. And it's also really you wanna write a book. Ultimately, your name is going on the book, right? So you wanna write a book that you feel good about and that you feel like represents what you wanna say. And so it
Yeah,
is important, I say, to ask those difficult questions up front, and to be willing to say, like, "This actually doesn't feel like a good fit," and be okay with, like, walking away from something if it doesn't feel aligned.
yeah, and
Yeah.
especially if you're talking about money, which
Yeah.
is not the most important thing, which is something that a lot of people try to balance, and you'll figure like, "Oh, am I doing it for the money or am I doing it for the message that I'm trying to bring to people in the way that I know I can?" Because some, public publishers will force something onto you versus letting you bring the message to them, right?
Yes, absolutely, and so I do think it's really important to have those conversations before you sign any contracts.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about, writing your actual book and the message of your book that you why you think it's important?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the message of body liberation and the book about is about body liberation, it's about anti-diet culture, it's about like how do we learn to feel um to live in a body, and come to peace with this vessel that we reside in, right? And I talk a lot about the history of bodies, the history of like racism as it pertains to body image and gender and sexuality, and like how those things affect our ability to feel good in our bodies. And I think it's an important topic because we all reside in a body and they all have implications, right? And there's societal implications, there's personal implications. And I know personally, I spent so many years like really um, and a negative relationship with body image and, always trying to shrink my body and force my body to look a certain way. And it took up so much of my creative abilities and my creative space, my mental space. And so and also I used to work in wellness and I used to work in fitness. I used to be a trainer. And so like I felt like my story was the same story that multiple people that were coming to me as clients had. And so I realized like body image is something that most of us are in some way or capacity dealing with or trying to heal. And so I felt like it was an important topic, and it was something that I felt very strongly and passionate about sharing with the world.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes the representation of somebody who looks like you is like the biggest part of why certain people need to write certain things because somebody else could have written a book very similar to yours, but obviously it's coming from a different perspective. So I think when people like you see that you're the one telling the message, they're more likely to listen to you.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about publishing, we desperately need diversity in publishing. Only 2% of books are written by Black women. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for all people of color, but it's a very, very small percentage. And so it's really important to have diverse representation in publishing because people need to see themselves represented. But also, when you have a different perspective, you also see the world, you see things happening through a different lens. And it's important for for people from different backgrounds to also have subject matter that's representative of them, right? So it's like important that we're taking an intersectional approach to the work that we do. And so, yeah, diversity in publishing is very, very important.
Yeah, even if you're not part of the group, it
Yeah.
gives you a great perspective on the way other people live, and it gives you it allows you to have more empathy for situations that other people are in. You're just making assumptions all the time. We're all making assumptions all the time, but I think the more that we can help share messages about specific people's stories, the more specific you are when you're storytelling, the more likely it is to be universally understood, which is crazy,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, can you talk about any of the stories about people who have read the book and the message that they got out of it?
Yeah, I think that is one of the most, how do I describe it? Like, it's so interesting because the publishing is always super one of the things that I wanna say dislike, but I think one of the things that makes publishing difficult, especially through the traditional publishing lens, is that it's always about, like, numbers and how many books did you sell and, like, all of these things, which I understand, but also it can sometimes make the process also feel like if you haven't reached a certain number, then, like, is the work valuable? And I think what has really helped me throughout all of this is, like, getting messages from people who have read the book, right? And my whole thing when I wrote the book is that I wanted people to feel seen, understood, represented. I wanted them to hopefully help heal their relationship with the body image, not completely, because that's not possible for any person to do,
Mhm.
but to help them on that journey. And so I've gotten so and every pretty much all the time, I get so many messages from people telling me that this book has helped them in such impactful ways that, people have literally said this changed my life. And like even that feels like such a big thing to hold because it's like to feel like I wrote something that really helped someone in that capacity, is I don't even know sometimes how to accept that.
Yeah.
But I think that is what I always remember when it feels like the work maybe isn't resounding with you folks in the way that you want it to, or you feel like it's not having as big as impact as you possibly wanted to. It's like remembering that like you're helping people day to day. And I think that's so important for anybody who writes, whether you're a published author or not. It's like when you're out there writing, sometimes it feels like you're writing into the void and you're like, is anybody listening? Does anybody care about this? But like the thing that I always remind myself is if one person has been helped by the words I wrote, then it was worth it. And so I think it's something that, can feel really challenging, and especially in social media world, right? Because you see like it's so hyper focused sometimes on numbers and likes and reshares and how many subscribers do I have and all of these things. And it's like ultimately, am I doing work that's helping someone? Is someone benefiting from this? And that's what drives me to continue doing the work. Because if you get lost in the numbers, you will feel frustrated and you'll feel like the work isn't valuable, but the work is valuable. And I always think of like so many authors whose work wasn't maybe even discovered till after they were, passed away. And it's like that's having such an impact on people. And so for me, I always have to focus on the impact, not the numbers, not the money, not those things, because that will leave you frustrated. But having an impact based approach is the thing that always drives me to continue doing the work and drives me like the work I'm doing now, post work as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we've been trained to look at the numbers of, especially since the dawn of like social media, to look at these numbers and be like, this is just focused on this. But if you actually take a second, like when people describe um, when you're posting something and you get, I don't know, 10 likes and 100 people read it. Just imagine like 10 people in a room talking to you in a room, and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing," right? And then 100 people, imagine like a room full of 100 people who all read the thing, and as you scale up, obviously, you're going out into the big scales like stadiums worth of people, but even if you're just helping like hundreds or even tens of people, the impact that you can make, isn't your worth isn't, um I don't know I don't know how to say it, is your worth isn't from the numbers, it's from the
Mhm.
impact, right?
Yeah, and I think we've become a little desensitized because it's exactly what you said, right? Like, if 100 people read something that you wrote, that's incredible. That's incredible. And even if it's like a short paragraph on social media, if 100 people read the thing that you wrote, that is incredible. And I think that we start to become desensitized because we're used to these, well, not even necessarily personally, but we're seeing people with these viral moments and these viral clips. And we start to become desensitized to the fact that, like, if somebody, even, as a Substack writer, if 30 people read my Substack, like, to me, that's incredible. Like 30 people took 10 or more minutes to read something that I wrote. And so it's like when we step back and really think about that, like that's major and that's incredible. And it's so easy to get swept up and like stop realizing like, yeah, 100 people read this. I have 100 people that are signed up to my newsletter on Substack. Like 100 people want my words in their inbox. Like that's not any small thing. And so, yeah, I think when we just come back to like, why are we doing the work that we're doing? And being led by that impact versus being like, caught up in the numbers, like that is, I think that's what helps you because otherwise you were constantly in a world where like clickbait and like rage bait and like these viral things, like you will find yourself frustrated if you're focusing on that.
Yeah, especially, since people's attentions can be split among an infinite number of things now. You can go anywhere and do anything you want, but people took the time and, the effort to really dig into the work, and that's really important because even if, like, only a handful of people like it or shared it or whatever, that's still, like, a bunch of people that
Yeah.
could, at that point, spread your message. And,
Yes.
Becky, thanks for the message, yeah, about the sensitization. It's, we're all just, like, used to seeing hundreds and thousands, you're like, "Ah, that's whatever, you didn't hit 1,000,000 likes," or whatever it is. That's not really a real metric unless you get this magical boost from virality or anything, something like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to remember too is like virality does not equal like engaged readers. And I think
Mm,
we also forget that. Like you can go viral on something and you can have like a bunch of people. Even if you went like a viral Substack note, I don't know what that means in Substack terms, but like for the sake of this conversation, even if you had a viral Substack note and you got like 3 or 400 new subscribers, that could be awesome. But like also people like your note likely isn't representative of the content that you actually write about in whole. And so it's like how many of those people are going to stay and also how many of those people are going to be engaged in what you're writing about. And so I always like to remind myself that like virality does not equal engaged readers or supporters. And so I'm less concerned about having viral moments or having a huge the biggest number of subscribers I could possibly have, like, of course, I'll welcome them, but it's like, do I have an engaged audience that cares about the things that I'm talking and writing about?
yeah, it's like having 1,000 people who are just looking at it and they're like, "Okay," versus,
Yes.
like, 100 people who share it every time they see it. Like,
Yeah,
there's a big,
exactly.
huge difference. Even 1,000,000 people, if you see 1,000,000 people, maybe, like, 10 of those people will share it, but if you had 100 people who are dedicated to your work and like your stuff and all that, it's important to focus on the people you're making an impact for versus the masses, because playing to the masses usually doesn't end well.
No, it doesn't end well, and I think too, like, when we're thinking about social media now, like you already spoke to, is that we have all developed, like, a very short attention span, right? And so it's, like, a lot of videos and, like, 10 seconds you have, like, 10 seconds to attract people's attention to keep watching the video, and it's like, kudos to all the people that play that game. That's not the game that I'm playing though, because like especially as a person who writes long form content, like I can't really make my work accessible to someone who wants to have 10 seconds to spend on it. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like understanding that we're also doing two different things. I focus on long form content. Sometimes I make video content. And actually I'm always to be fair, I'm always really surprised when I do make video content because I am long winded. Like I don't know how to be concise with my words. So sometimes I'll make like reels or TikToks that are 7 minutes long, which I know is way too long, but I'm always impressed that I do have an audience that will listen to it. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I know I've cultivated the type of audience that I want because I don't have anything to say in 15 seconds. I'm just not built that way.
You know, and I think it's important to figure out who you're trying to message to versus trying to message towards virality, because if you know your audience, you can speak directly to them, because that's why they're following you, right? They're not following you just because no one does that. It's because they think your message is important and they really want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. And I think for all of us, like the thing I'm always constantly working towards is reclaiming my attention span. And so I am intentionally trying to watch less short form content, less short videos and reels because it really is changing our brain chemistry and that's a whole nother
Mm.
conversation. But I'm really trying to re claim my energy and my attention span. And so I'm also writing for people who are hopefully working to do the same thing, but that's pretty much what I have to offer. So that's just that.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your work on Substack and how that's going versus what you do on other platforms, I guess?
Yeah, I really like Substack. I mean, no platform is without its issues.
Right.
Obviously, there's not a perfect platform out there. But what I do like about Substack in particular is that I think people are coming to read. And so I feel like it is a great space for long-term content because that's what you will find there. And you'll find people who are active, engaged readers. And I feel like, I didn't really come to Substack with any big expectations, and that's how I approach most things. I'm like, let's just see what happens. But I really enjoyed it. I feel like I wasn't very consistent with Substack my first probably like 6 months, maybe even 8 months. I don't even know. But I have been more consistent as of late, and I enjoy writing here. I enjoy engaging with people here. And again, no platform is perfect, but I do really, really like it, and I feel like I am using my other social media less and more so directing people to find my work here. And it's not that I never make content for Instagram or TikTok because I do, but not nearly as much, with not as much consistency because again, I just feel like it can be the apps for me have kind of been draining. And so
Right. For everyone, I think.
yeah, I think I've just found myself spending less time there, and I'm also thinking about how I'm using those video platforms in a way that I find like I don't wanna be just adding to the noise, I want it to be something that is actually helpful and beneficial for people, and so trying to figuring out how I want to do that in a way that feels meaningful.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, don't be on there just to be on there. You have to be intent about the way that you approach anything. Like Substack, obviously, a lot of readers long form, so it's beautiful for that. So it's not the same on anything, but you can mix and match contact, pull stuff from wherever you're creating and kind of work with it. But I think it's important to figure out what you feel comfortable doing, what you like doing, and not feel the need to be everywhere all the time because that's just a good way to burn yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really important too because I think so many of us are writers because we enjoy writing, and then again, it's like you have to keep up with the industry, but it's like now I feel like I have to be a writer and I have to be a social media expert. It's like I don't really want to be a social media expert. So it's like how do you use it in a way that is beneficial to share your work? Because again, I do think that I got many opportunities I got because of social. So it's like how do I use it to benefit my work without draining me and burning me out so that I still have my capacity to be creative and to do the things that like actually fuel me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a few questions left, and if anyone in the chat has anything, please feel free to send them in. Um, do you know any other standout authors, and who are they, and what did they do?
On Substack or just in general?
Whoever you want to give a shout out
Oh my
to, I
gosh,
guess.
there's so many great authors. Well, I always shout this book out because it was one of the books that was really fundamental in my own journey with body image. And that is now it's gonna escape me. The Body is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. So she's an amazing author. I'm a huge fan of her work. Her book was really, really fundamental for changing my own thoughts about my body. Also, Fearing the Black Body by Dr. Sabrina Strings. Her work was also really informative in the work that I do. Um, Other books that are we only talking about living authors or are we talking about any authors?
Whoever you feel like deserves
Um,
the spotlight.
Audre Lorde is one of my favorite authors of all time. I learned so much from the work and writing of Audre Lorde and, of course, James Baldwin. I feel like both of those authors have been really formative to just the type of writing I aspire to do. My friend Shauna, who's on here, the nutritionist T, she wrote a really great book. I don't know what it's here. It's called Live Nourished. I thought it was around here, but it's not. It's called Live Nourished. Her book is really great. And she talks so much about nutritional through a way that's really accessible and approachable in anti-diet culture. So I love her book as well. I'm like blanking, but there's so many good books. I'm an avid reader. So I love reading fiction and nonfiction. And I will be honest, 90% of the time now I'm reading fiction because I just love I don't know, like, I think fiction is for me, fuels my creativity in a way that nonfiction doesn't. I like nonfiction because I do like to learn, and so I am always reading some type of nonfiction, but, fiction itself is, to me, like, also very it boosts my creative, energy, I feel like, and I also learn a lot from fiction, like, I love historical fiction, so I've been reading a lot of fiction lately too.
Yeah, I think fiction for writers is especially important because it gives you a lens on how you can tell a better story as a
Yeah,
writer. Versus
yeah,
if you read a lot of nonfiction, obviously there's different ways to do that, but I think fiction is very good because that's the point of it is to tell a story and how do you
yeah.
convey the story and how do you bring in characters and meaning into all the stuff that you're doing. So it's important to have a balance of fiction and nonfiction if you're trying to be a writer and learning from writers.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that sometimes people undervalue the importance of fiction, because they're like, "Oh, it's just a story," but it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, I feel like fiction helps you even be a better nonfiction writer because again, it tells you, like, how to tell a compelling story and how to build depth and character. So yeah.
Yes. I think that's where, storytelling starts, right? Usually it starts with fiction.
Yeah.
Philosophers weren't telling nonfiction stories for the most part, they were telling stories so that people can really grasp onto the ideas and, further them into the future versus I think nonfiction is probably more of a relatively recent thing versus, at the beginning of human history.
Mhm. Yeah.
What message do you want people to take from your writing and your work?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think for one thing I would say is like I from the book, but just also the work I do on Substack is I think the message I want people to take away is to feel more unapologetic about taking up space, and I say taking up space, I mean just, like, being unapologetic and about who you are in the world, and I think especially the message applies to everyone, but I think especially for women, like, it's like, we get so many messages about how we're supposed to show up and, like, what choices we're supposed to make, and there's so much, like, societal conditioning and programming, and I think that I want to help people to feel more liberated in their lives in all areas of their lives, and feel, like, confident to make the decisions that feel most aligned for them, even if society, your friends, your family don't always understand those decisions. It's like I've made a lot of difficult decisions over the last 5 or 6 years of my life, 7 years that people didn't always understand, but I am living a life that feels most like me than I ever have, and it's because I made difficult decisions.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's important to tap into the most you version of anything just because if you don't, you're really taking more energy than you need to in order to really live in society. There's so many things telling us what to do, but the real thing that we need to do is listen to our bodies and our minds and our heart, and really work with that versus like pushing up the hill. I don't remember the Greek myth, but you're pushing the rock up the hill constantly, and
Mhm.
it's eventually it's going to fall back down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors or writers?
What advice would I have? I mean, honestly, I think the advice I give myself every day is just keep writing, keep creating. And again, like sometimes keep creating, keep writing, and do your absolute best not to compare yourself to other people. I tell myself that every single day. Because if you start doing that, that's when you will feel defeated or you'll feel deflated. And I just say, like, the work shows up where it's supposed to show up, when it's supposed to show up. And sometimes that's out of our control. And so it's like, my message for myself and for other people is to keep writing the things that you feel passionate about, and the right audience will show up for you. And one thing I'm really, like, really intentional about is that I don't ever try to change my writing to what I think is, like, the end thing to be writing about or other things that I feel like are becoming popular to write about. I can only write from a place of authenticity, and
Mhm.
I can only write from a place of, like, passion that I really am like, topics that I'm really passionate about, and, like, I just trust that the work will show up to the people who will feel engaged with the work. Um, because otherwise, if you're just trying to write the thing that you think you should write, you'll burn out. Also, you won't I don't know, I personally wouldn't feel fulfilled doing that. So, I say keep writing and also just be patient with yourself. I mean, I think that, like, I try to write every day, but some days I just don't have it and I don't write. And, like, even on those days, I'm compassionate with myself. And I trust that, like, I will get back to the place that feels really good, that feels in flow and all of those things. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, just tapping into who you are and just focusing on the things that you know you can do well versus the things that people think you should be doing. It's like we were talking about in the beginning with the book publisher. If they forced a message onto you, you wouldn't like to write it anymore. You really need to
Yeah.
focus in on the things that are important to you in your voice and really the message that you're trying to get across in order to find the people who are looking for the message.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I will add to that is, like, sometimes the thing that you write about or care about, like, I still talk a lot about, like, inclusion and, like, anti-racism, and those and this political climate aren't popular topics, but, like, that doesn't mean I'm not gonna write about them anymore, you know? And so it's like, I care less about what the world thinks or what's popular, or if there's even repercussions about the things that you write about. Like, I just don't care. I'm gonna write the things that I feel like I need to write about that are true to me, and that's just that. Like, I don't compromise on certain things.
Yeah, I think I don't remember where I heard this, but there was a writing group I was part of that someone said the things that are hardest to say are usually the things that need to be heard the most, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Can you give people watching this a challenge that they can take on in order to stand out as a writer?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. A challenge they can take on. You know what? Kind of going along with what we just said, like, I challenge someone to say the scary thing. I remember, like, this was like way back. This is probably like in 2016 or something like that. I has just started like blogging again, and I was in fitness at that time, and then I was working like doing online fitness stuff, and I had an article about is fitness only for thin white women, talking about the lack of include diversity in fitness. And I sat on the article for a really long time because it felt really uncomfortable to share that. And finally I did, and that was, like, one of the first articles that, like, people because also I didn't have an audience either, so I don't know why I was so scared, but, like, I was. And that article was one of the first articles that I wrote that people read and was shared hundreds of times, and it was the thing that was, like, that time, the scariest thing for me to talk about. But that really gave me the confidence then to say, "Actually, this is something that people wanna hear about," number 1, and also, like, I did this thing that was really scary, and it really wasn't that bad. So I think the thing that you feel like is just too scary to share in the world, that's what I would challenge people to just maybe think about actually sharing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think people worry about having a giant audience, but when you're small, I love to think about it like people aren't watching. So
Right.
if you make a mistake, who cares? Like no one, all the no people that are watching you or reading you or whatever it is, they're still not going to see it. So you might as well just put out the work that you
Yeah.
think needs to be read or heard or the message that needs to be shared. So why not do it? When you get bigger, obviously you have more things to worry about, and that's when you have to balance whether or not it's something that you really want to say versus something that you need to hold on to.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think too, even the idea of making mistakes, like, yeah, from like a concept, but like I also think about just making mistakes, like grammatical mistakes. I'm a big believer of like just do the work and post it. The mistakes you can. I'm not saying you should not edit your work, but like I don't hyper focus on like if I have a typographical error. I share something on social media yesterday, I think, that has a lot of shares, and I realized, like, there's a massive typo in the thing that I shared, and I'm like, "Oh, well," like, they figure out people understand what I'm trying to say, and they're still sharing it, so, yes, it's a typo, but, like, also, it's not that big of a deal. So, I think also too, like, recognizing that, like, just get the work out and, like, let go of that sense of perfectionism sometime is also really helpful too.
Yeah. Done is better than perfect because
Yeah.
perfect is never achievable. It's not a thing. So don't worry about it being perfect. Just if it's good enough and you feel like it, read it. Is it good enough? Or if you're making a video, watch it. Is it good enough? Then just send it,
Just
right?
send it, yeah, like, don't overthink it. I really think that some of the things that I have had the most success with are the things that either A, I didn't think were even gonna be that like, I didn't think those were the things that were gonna really take off, and also B, are the things I spent probably the least amount of time on. I'm just like, "Okay, this is it. I'm sending it out. It doesn't have to be perfect." And, like, I think that the world doesn't expect perfection from us, even though it does sometimes feel that way, and, like, that's a whole 'nother conversation, but, I think that I've just got really comfortable with, like, letting the work out. I'm like, it's in the hands of the internet now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Chrissy, this has been amazing talking to you. Can you let people know where to find you, your Substack, your website, any of that stuff?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Kevin. This is really fun. And my Substack is the Liberation Collective. My website is chrissyking.com, and on Instagram, TikTok, basically all social media, it's I am Chrissy King.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching and joining in on the live, and for anybody that's watching on the replay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.